Frank Martinez hit the asphalt hard, his 74-year-old bones protesting as the steel-toed boot connected with his ribs for the second time. The young biker standing over him laughed while his girlfriend recorded the assault on her phone, narrating like it was some kind of entertainment show for social media. "Look at this old piece of shit," the biker said, pulling back his foot for another kick. "Thinks he can tell us where to park." Frank had only asked them to move their Harley from the handicapped spot outside the VA clinic. Now he lay bleeding in the parking lot, clutching his purple heart medal that had been torn from his jacket during the attack, wondering if anyone would even care that a decorated Vietnam veteran was being beaten like a dog. 18 minutes later, the rumble of 32 motorcycles without license plates shook the windows of every building in a 6-block radius. The assault had started when Frank noticed the young couple had parked their motorcycle in the handicapped space directly in front of the VA clinic entrance. Frank was walking with his cane, moving slowly after his recent hip surgery, when he saw an elderly veteran in a wheelchair struggling to get close enough to the building. "Excuse me," Frank had said politely, approaching the couple who were lounging against their bike. "That's a handicapped spot. There are other spaces available." The biker, maybe 25 years old with a scraggly beard and prison tattoos, looked Frank up and down with obvious disdain. "You see a cop around here, old man?" "No, but I see a disabled veteran who can't get to his appointment because you're blocking the access. Not my problem." Frank's voice hardened. "It is your problem. Move the bike." "Or what? Or I'll call the police." The biker's girlfriend, a thin woman with needle tracks on her arms, started recording with her phone. "Oh, this is gonna be good," she said. "Tough guy veteran thinks he runs the place." The biker pushed Frank backward. Frank stumbled but kept his balance. "You want to try that again, tough guy?" The biker taunted. "I just want you to move your motorcycle, and I want you to fuck off." The biker shoved Frank again, harder this time. Frank's cane went flying and he fell against the side of a parked car. "Jake, just move the bike," the girlfriend said, still recording. "This is boring." "Nah, old boy here needs to learn some respect." Jake grabbed Frank by his jacket and threw him to the ground. As Frank tried to get up, Jake kicked him in the ribs. "Stay down, old man." Frank struggled to his knees, blood trickling from his mouth. "I fought in Vietnam so punks like you could have the freedom to be pieces of shit." "Yeah? Well, your war was like 50 years ago, Grandpa. Nobody cares." Jake kicked Frank again, this time in the back. Frank's purple heart medal pinned to his jacket came loose and skittered across the asphalt. "Oh, look," the girlfriend said, zooming in with her phone. "He's got a little medal. How cute." Jake picked up the medal and dangled it in front of Frank's face. "This supposed to mean something? It means I bled for this country." "Well, you're about to bleed some more." Jake pulled back his foot for another kick when the sound reached them. A low rumble that seemed to come from every direction at once. "What the hell is that?" the girlfriend asked, lowering her phone. The rumble grew louder, more distinct. "Motorcycles. A lot of them." Jake looked around nervously. "Probably just some Sunday riders." But Frank was smiling despite the pain. He recognized that sound. He'd heard it before 30 years ago, when he'd helped establish the Veterans Motorcycle Club chapter in Phoenix. The first motorcycle appeared at the end of the street, a massive black Harley with no license plate. Then another. Then 10 more. Within minutes, 32 motorcycles had surrounded the parking lot of the VA clinic. The riders were all veterans. Frank could tell immediately. They moved with military precision, dismounting their bikes and forming a perimeter around Jake and his girlfriend. Most were in their 50s and 60s, but there were younger ones too. Iraq and Afghanistan veterans mixed with Vietnam and Gulf War vets. None of them spoke. They just stood there, engines ticking as they cooled, staring at Jake and the girl. "What the fuck is this?" Jake demanded, trying to sound tough but unable to hide the fear in his voice. The lead rider, a man in his 60s with a gray beard and wearing a leather vest covered in military patches, stepped forward. He knelt beside Frank and helped him sit up. "You okay, brother?" "I've been better, Sergeant Major." "Can you stand?" With some help. 2 other veterans helped Frank to his feet. The Sergeant Major picked up Frank's purple heart medal and pinned it back on his jacket. "Who the hell are you people?" Jake shouted. The sergeant major stood and faced Jake. "We're the people who answer when one of our brothers calls for help." "I didn't call anyone," Frank said quietly. "You didn't have to. Sarah Martinez over there." He pointed to a woman in her 40s wearing an Army veteran's jacket. "Was in the clinic for her appointment. She saw what happened and sent out the alert." Jake looked around at the 32 veterans surrounding him. Some were big men who looked like they could break him in half. Others were smaller, older, but all of them had the hard eyes of people who'd seen real violence. "Look, this is just a misunderstanding," Jake said, his bravado evaporating. "Is it?" The sergeant major picked up Jake's phone, which the girlfriend had dropped when the motorcycles arrived. "Because this video she was taking tells a different story." He held up the phone, showing Jake kicking Frank while the girlfriend narrated about the tough guy veteran. "Seems pretty clear to me. You assaulted a decorated veteran in front of a VA clinic. He started it. He was hassling us about parking in a handicapped spot, while disabled veterans couldn't access the building." Jake's girlfriend tugged on his arm. "Baby, let's just go. This is getting weird. Nobody's going anywhere until we sort this out," the sergeant major said. One of the younger veterans, a woman with burn scars on her face and an Afghanistan patch on her jacket, stepped forward. "I know this piece of shit," she said, staring at Jake. "He's been dealing meth outside the high school on Camelback Road." "That's a lie," Jake protested. "Is it? Because I work with at-risk youth and 3 of my kids have overdosed on product they bought from you." Another veteran spoke up. "He's also been running protection rackets at local businesses. My brother owns a shop downtown. This asshole demanded $500 a month to keep his place safe." "You can't prove any of that," Jake said, but his voice was shaking now. The sergeant major smiled coldly. "We don't have to prove anything. We're not cops." He gestured to his fellow veterans. "But we are citizens. Concerned citizens who've served our country and don't appreciate seeing drug dealers assault elderly veterans. What do you want? First, you're going to apologize to Frank here, sincerely." "Fine. Sorry, old man. That's not sincere. Try again." Jake looked around at the circle of veterans. Every face was hard, unforgiving. "I'm sorry, sir. I shouldn't have hit you," Frank nodded. "Apology accepted. Second," the sergeant major continued, "you're going to turn yourself into the police for assault and battery. Like hell I am. Or we'll turn you in ourselves. Along with this video evidence and testimony from 32 witnesses." Jake's girlfriend was crying now. "Baby, just do what they say. I don't want any trouble. Third, you're going to stop dealing drugs in this neighborhood." "I don't know what you're talking about." The veteran with the burn scars stepped closer. "I lost half my face to an IED in Kandahar. You think I'm afraid of some piece of shit meth dealer?" "And fourth," the sergeant major said, "you're going to leave town. Tonight. If we see you around here again, we're going to have another conversation. And next time, there might be 50 of us." Jake looked around desperately. There was no way out. The veterans had positioned themselves to block every exit from the parking lot. "This is kidnapping, false imprisonment." "Is it? Because I don't see any restraints? You're free to leave anytime you want, you just have to walk through us to do it." One of the older veterans, a man with a Vietnam patch and a missing left arm, spoke up. "Son, I've killed better men than you for threatening my brothers. Don't test my patience." Jake's resolve finally cracked. Okay, I'll turn myself in. I'll leave town. Just let us go." "One more thing," Frank said, stepping forward despite his injuries. "The phone. What about it? Your girlfriend recorded you assaulting me. Delete the video. But delete it. Or we'll make sure it goes viral on every social media platform in the country. Local meth dealer assaults decorated veteran. See how that affects your business." The girlfriend quickly deleted the video with shaking hands. "It's gone," she said. "Everything's deleted." The sergeant major nodded to his people. The circle of veterans opened, creating a path to Jake's motorcycle. "You've got 5 minutes to get out of here before we call the police ourselves," he said. Jake and his girlfriend hurried to their bike. As they prepared to leave, the sergeant major called out one final warning. "And Jake, if anything happens to Frank here, If he has an accident, if his house gets robbed, if he even gets a flat tire, we're going to assume it was you, and we're going to respond accordingly. Jake gunned his engine and peeled out of the parking lot, his girlfriend clinging to his back. The veterans watched them disappear down the street, then began mounting their own motorcycles. "You need a ride to the hospital, Frank?" the sergeant major asked. "I think I'm okay. Maybe just some ice for these ribs. Sarah's going to follow up with the police report. Make sure this gets properly documented." Frank looked around at the group of veterans who had appeared out of nowhere to help him. "How did you all get here so fast?" The sergeant major smiled. "We have a network. When one of us is in trouble, the word goes out. Veterans helping veterans. But 32 of you? In 18 minutes? Frank, there are over 300 members of the Veterans Motorcycle Club in the Phoenix metro area. 32 was just the first wave." As the veterans prepared to leave, Frank grabbed the sergeant major's arm. "I don't even know your name, Mike." "Rodriguez, Army Rangers, 3 tours in Afghanistan. Frank Martinez, 1st Cavalry Division, 2 tours in Vietnam." "I know who you are, Frank. We all do. Sarah recognized you from the VA. She said you volunteer with homeless veterans, help them get into housing programs. It's not much. It's everything to the guys you help. That's why we came." The veterans mounted their motorcycles and prepared to leave. As they did, Frank noticed something he hadn't seen before. Several of the bikes had small flags attached to their handlebars. American flags. "Mike," Frank called out over the rumble of engines. "Yeah? Thank you." "No need to thank us, brother. We look after our own." The motorcycles roared to life and pulled out of the parking lot in formation. Within minutes, they had disappeared into the Phoenix traffic, leaving no trace except the smell of exhaust and the echo of engines. Frank stood alone in the parking lot, fingering his Purple Heart medal and thinking about what had just happened. He'd served his country for 2 tours in Vietnam, been decorated for valor, and spent the last 30 years volunteering to help other veterans. But he'd never felt more proud to be a veteran than he did right now. An hour later, Frank was sitting in the VA clinic getting his ribs x-rayed when his phone buzzed with a text message from an unknown number. "Jake Williams arrested at city limits. Possession with intent to distribute. Thanks for the heads up about his drug dealing. Detective Morrison, Phoenix PD." Frank smiled and put his phone away. Apparently, the Veterans Motorcycle Club had friends in the police department too. As he waited for his x-ray results, Frank thought about the network that had mobilized so quickly to help him. Hundreds of veterans across the city, all connected, all ready to respond when one of their brothers needed help. He thought about Jake Williams, probably sitting in a jail cell right now, learning that actions have consequences. And he thought about the young veterans in the group, the ones who'd served in Iraq and Afghanistan, who'd come home to a country that didn't always appreciate their sacrifice. They'd learned something important today, too. They'd learned that the brotherhood, forged in combat, doesn't end when you take off the uniform. It lasts a lifetime. Frank's phone buzzed again. This time it was a message from Sarah Martinez, the veteran who'd witnessed the assault. "Heard you're okay. Next time you need backup, just call. We've got your 6. VMC Phoenix chapter." Frank looked around the VA clinic waiting room at the other veterans waiting for their appointments. Old men like himself, younger veterans still dealing with visible and invisible wounds, all of them part of something larger than themselves. His phone buzzed a third time. Unknown number. "Mr. Martinez, this is Channel 12 News. We heard about an incident at the VA clinic today. Can we interview you about what happened?" Frank deleted the message without responding. Some stories didn't need to be told on the evening news. Some stories were just about brothers looking after brothers. The x-ray technician called his name, and Frank stood up, his ribs still aching, but his spirit lighter than it had been in years. As he walked down the hallway, he passed a bulletin board covered with flyers for various veteran services. In the corner was a small notice that read, "Veterans Motorcycle Club, Phoenix Chapter, rides every Sunday. All veterans welcome. Brotherhood doesn't end with discharge." Frank made a mental note to show up next Sunday. It was time he got back on a bike.